Hi everybody, it's the Alco Diesel Guy with a very long overdue layout update, I guess you could call it. I have been up to a lot of different things. I had actually done some work last year, and unfortunately it appears I lost the footage of it, so I'm going to quickly go over it. If we see right over here, if I do find it, I will post it anyway, just to show how it worked through. But if we take a look underneath here to start with, I guess I'll start with a nose. It's going to be kind of hard to see because of how dark it is now, but I just figure since I'm in here, I might as well just quickly go over it. What we have down here now is nickel silver track. Kind of hard to see, but there you can see better of it. This whole area that used to be flex, the old brass flex track that ran all the way through my tunnel over here, right up to where that switch is over there, is now all been rebuilt with nickel silver section track, snap track as Atlas calls it. Getting the radius right on these curves was a bit of a challenge because that was a custom track my father and I put in. We got sort of a weird radius of like 20 or 19, something like 20 and a half inches or 19 inches or 20 inches in some areas. So I had to really mess with this. As you can see, there's some extension tracks here in some areas. And I did all kinds of crazy antics to try to get this to fit. This area here wasn't too bad. I was able to just do 22 inches and just widen the turnout a little bit more and make it work. The area that I had to mess with here was right over here. This has a few 18-inch sections in it now. I can sort of get away with it. That's about the only way I could do it. And that's, again, all nickel silver. And the reason being, again, this is sort of like a 20.5-inch radius, and there was no room to go because the structure for my trestle is right above it. And to really okay all that would have been too much trouble. So I just kind of worked around it, and it seems to work fine. I've run several test trains on it. But the sort of bigger news that I have is something I got working on. If we take a look here, here's my yard. As you can see, all is not well or not normal here. The track that used to cross over, for example, and run to my yard itself has been changed. It's now, instead of running to the turntable, I should say, it now runs in my engine maintenance facility. It now runs to a switch, and this switch in turn is now got a loop of track running around it that goes actually all the way through the tunnel and back around. I won't bother showing you in there, but you can take my word for it, it runs in there. And basically what this is going to be is something I came up with. I was in a weird pensive mood, kind of just staring at the wall the other day and wasn't sure what to do and the thing about this layout, I should back up a little bit, that's been killing me since I had it built, is that despite its size, initially I could only run 2 trains. I got that up to 3 with the new loops, and then 4 with that loop, and then 5 with this loop up here. But still, they're all kind of tricky, and you have to sort of work around things to get 5 trains running. Anyway, I wanted a loop that was completely independent and wouldn't be a problem, and that's how part of the idea came in. I figured, well, this is the only area I could put it in, and then after a while of thinking about putting it around the surface area, I thought, hey, why not do this thing where I have a train running around here where it's doing a tour of my shops? And like take an extra, like an old vintage RS3, which I have a few models of, and go ahead and run that. And with that idea in mind, I went ahead and created this loop, and yep, that's what I did. So basically this is going to be the loop that this is going to run. That's going to be the new area where the turntable goes in on that side and through this side of the turntable. The original turntable itself is giving me problems. I'm probably going to have to change this out. Usually the only way to fix it is to take it off the board and clean the brushes on it. They have these weird brushes. There are 2 different contact lines that contact these 2 screws here where the power goes in. And as this rotates, the 2 brushes kind of ride along the contact lines. They eventually get dirty and they don't make contact anymore. And the only way to fix it is to basically take it apart and mess around and clean them out, which is a real pain. So I may have to look for a Bachmann turntable. I may reduce the shed sizes that I have here, the amount of sheds I have here, because the Bachmann turntable does not have as many slots. Anyway, that's kind of what I've been up to so far. This whole section is very roughed out, I should mention. There's a lot of track that I've had laying around for 20 plus years. It's old brass track combined with some new nickel silver track and a few other things. I've already ordered nickel silver track to replace all this. I've already ordered some switch motors to fix some of my switches, because I've got some other switches, nickel silver switches like that one there. The motor fell off on that one, and it doesn't matter anyway because that is a manual motor thing. Anyway, I'm going to have to put motors in them. I'm going to have to wire one in over here so it can be thrown from the front panel over here on the front, because there's no way I'm going to be able to reach back there and get it. I'm going to have to do a few other tweaks to make this work. But anyway, that's essentially what I've been up to. And hopefully I'll have more updates on this soon. Been kind of busy lately, just getting back into things, fixing things up. And I'll end this up. Anyway, I'm going to end this update there. Take care, everyone. Alrighty, back to you on this big roundhouse project thing. As you see, from the previous videos you saw, I had everything mocked up. Now I've started taking it apart again because I had to do some tweaks to start with. I had to put motors on these switches. I had a lot of these older switches, the motors actually for them, that I'd gotten in a while back. So this switch didn't have a motor on it, so I went ahead and just attached that to this. The motor actually on this one was a manual, I believe, and it fell off as I took it out, broke, but it doesn't matter. It was a manual, so it wasn't going to help me anyway. So I attached this, which will work, as it turns out. It has the same screws and everything else. I've done this before. So anyway, I just went ahead and just reused it. It made sense, because these are also built in the USA as opposed to the others, which are not. And I find they work, but they're not the same quality from what I see. I also did the same to my other switch here. And I'll explain to you where these are going to go. This switch here is going to go where my turntable used to go out, which is right back over there. I can turn you and zoom you in right there. If you take a look right over here as I zoom down, that switch right over there used to be where the turntable went in. This track is going to go right in front of that. This track is going to hook up to that, and in turn merge onto my new single track, merge onto the new loop I'm putting in, and that's going to be the connection there. I'm going to need to do a few, of course installing switches means I'm going to need to drill some holes, so that's going to be the next step on this. I'm going to get my drill out and do a 3/16 inch hole, and I'm going to use the following type of wiring. This is something new I've recently discovered. What I have here is some telephone wire. I picked this up on my local Lowe's, and I use local very cautiously because my nearest store is about 45 minutes from here. But in any case, this is what I'm going to use to wire it up. It's telephone wire, essentially the same thing you get with the Atlas tracks. The main difference is this has a conduit around it, so it's kind of easy to keep it together. It doesn't wander all over the place. It'll just be there when I need it. The only thing I have to do now is sort of strip the ends off and give a rough amount of what it's going to take to get over here. It's okay to have a little bit extra slack, in my opinion. I'd rather have it than pull wire and accidentally have it break off, because I found keeping the wires too tight can be a problem with expansion and everything else. So I'm going to go ahead now, cut this wire to length, and actually wire my switches up ahead of time. The reason why I do this is because it's easier to shove the wires down into those holes than anything else. So anyway, first things first, let's go ahead now and cut the wire to length, and I'll start running, give myself a rough estimate on the wire and go ahead and run those. Okay, so as you can see right over here, I have done that first wire. Right back there. I'm going to go ahead now and work on, ooh, pardon me, this thing is so darn tricky to keep straight. I'm going to go now and work on this wire right over here. I should say the switch setup. Zoom in and show you what I'm up to, if I can get this camera to cooperate. I'm just going to go right there. I'm just going to run my wire down through that hole like I did on the previous one. And I've already connected, just to show you, I've already hooked the wire up to my switch. Done the color coding on it. Not sure how well that'll come out. I'm going to go ahead now and just feed it down through the board and hook it up. Again, this is a 3/16 inch hole I drilled through the board here to make it fit. It takes the conduit and all down through. Okay, now I got it in here, I just got to get the track to fit. There we are. Bend those wires in a bit, and that'll do it. Okay, so now both switches are wired up. I'll hook those wires to the front box later. Now I'm going to focus on taking the tracks out of here, which I have, which are a combination of steel and brass, which is not good, and replacing them with some nickel silver tracks. So let me go ahead and pull these out now while I have this. Probably won't be able to see much because they are kind of hidden underneath here. I can now sort of count the amount of tracks I have and figure out how many I need to replace them. I'll probably put all new rail joiners on them since they're not expensive. A and B to get them out of here is going to be such a pain that you know what. Pretty much past everything, past their lives anyway. Okay, there we are, one loop. Somewhat not very well put together, but was used to fabricate things. Now I got to go and rebuild this with nickel silver track, and I do have it. I'm not going to be reusing these rail joiners, obviously. I wasn't planning on. These are still, for the most part, what originally was on these tracks from 20 plus years ago. Ooh, pardon me, folks. Nearly knocked you over there. So counting up, I need roughly 6 tracks for this. I'm going to start off, this box has 2 left in it. I'll just use those up. And then but I also have actually 3 in it. This has another 6 in it, so I'll probably go ahead and just start with the one that's open just to get them used, and I'll start with this one then. Need some rail joiners, which I have over here. Again, it's a good idea if you're reusing old track or anything else, or you're building something new, just replace your rail joiners. They don't, as you see, they don't cost a ton to get them. They really come in handy. Yep, come in. I'm going to go ahead now and just open these up and use them because they've been taped shut, so very clearly these opened up on me at one point. Might as well use them up. And I need 6 to go around the curve, and I'll go ahead and install them. Okay, I did, as you can tell by my exasperated voice, things didn't quite go to plan, but I did get everything together. I have connected the track around. What it turns out is, around the back I should say by the tunnel, what it turns out is my radius was not 18 inches straight through. I had to put 3 15-inch tracks in there, turn tracks, and I was kind of short on them. The thing is, I shouldn't have been, because I had bought back in the day a set of 15-inch tracks when I did the second loop over here. When I rebuilt this section of my layout and I put that third loop in, I rebuilt the yard loop, and then I had to use 15 inches there. I had ordered extra, and I had extra, but they seem to be gone. I don't know if I used them or if I gave them away. I doubt I did that, but I just don't see them. So I had to use 2 of the nickel silver, or 3 of nickel silver, and then 1 steel of those. I don't know what happened to them. I am scratching my head as to what I did with them. Anyway, I had just enough to finish that and fix that up. I then had to join this here. I had to put like a little S-turn in the back on the side there, if I can just zoom in a little bit more to show you more of what's going on here. Take a look right there. I had to go with a slight S-turn to get the trains around. It's going to mean that big engines aren't probably not going to be welcome there too much, because they'll just have problems. Though I do have one of those little squiggles and other parts, as I call them, in my main line elsewhere on the system, and I don't have an issue with those. So I may just ban other engines from it. Luckily, I don't have to send the engines that way through this track. I can always send them backward around the loop the other way, or I can just go slow and it may be okay. Anyway, that's what I came up with. Yeah, so I'm going to basically take a break now and come back to this in just a few minutes, because this has been quite exhausting and I'm a bit exasperated. I'm also going to see if I can get some more 15-inch curves, because I have a feeling I'm going to need more of them before. Okay, I'm going to go ahead now and give this thing a try and see how it works. Ignore the other sounds that you're hearing. I'm interested in whether that RSD15 will actually make it around the layout. That little loop back there without the railing, so that's in good for that. I got the engine pulled up here. Start up. Oops. That wasn't good. I completely forgot. Yeah. Oh, come on. Seriously? This engine admittedly is very sensitive. I've never had it running quite right. This is one of the newer editions of this engine, of the Broadway Limited RSD15s. But the proprietary system that Broadway Limited put in there. And it worked. I even pushed my coach out. That actually works. Woohoo! So I did something. Alrighty, so that wasn't a complete waste today. That's good news. What I have to do next is screw down this section here. push this coach around and make sure that's all good. So I think may have been a good idea if I put some derailleurs in the tunnel, wouldn't it? Well, let's do it now for that. Yep, that appears to work fine. Okay, so now I got the track set up. I think I'm going to break this engine in a little bit. It is not running so long. I just want to put some mileage on it. Then I'll probably go back and start screwing down these tracks. I've already screwed down the tracks in the tunnel, so it wouldn't be a problem. So I guess now what I'll focus on is just getting this track broken in pretty well and also getting this engine some miles on it because I have not run this thing in ages. So as we can see, I've got my big alligator running around here. That is an RSD-15. Those of you who are in Alco files, Alco buffs, etc. It's a little bit dark. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get to this new camera. I don't know how well this is going to come out, but that's what I got. So anyway, on to the next step. I've already screwed the tracks down underneath the tunnel in the back here. I'm going to go ahead now and get to work on screwing down the front section of these tracks so they don't get any ideas about getting up and walking around and causing connectivity problems. On that's pretty well taken care of. The other thing I got to do is obviously make the entry point for this turntable match over here. See, I've got the switch installed there. That's going to be my new entry point for the turntable because the new connection for this loop is now through the old turntable entry. So that's going to have to get adjusted. Anyway. At least I got some of this stuff taken care of on this. Okay, I'm back on this project here. As you can see, a few things have changed. If we look very closely, to start with my turntable, so I'll zoom in a little bit more. If you note, there's a new colored shed on it, and there's a reason for that. I've actually changed the whole turntable out. This is actually the old one right here. I basically went ahead and started, as I was finishing this up last night, I actually was able to finally get that track in there. I was struggling to fit the entry-level track, the new entry-level track to the turntable in place. I decided to give everything a try, and I noticed that the typical problem with these Atlas turntables, this wasn't sending power to the center track here as it rotated. How this works, I should mention, is there are two brushes located underneath these two tracks, and they have two spring loads that touch these two rails right here. And those ride on two contact lines. You can see them in the inside over here. The problem is there's no way of getting to them on these turntables. You see this bolt is permanently plastic, is mounted into the plastic itself. This nut, I should say, is mounted into the plastic itself. You can't get it loose. And the front bolt on it is an unusual design. Essentially, this is not user serviceable. So I basically tried everything. I took it apart. I tried blowing some compressed air inside there to try to get the dust out. I cleaned the heck out of it. I did all kinds of stuff, and it just didn't work. It was work. I mean, I got it to work a little bit, but as you turned it, the connection would start to get jittery, and I'm like, am I really going to put this back in that after all the work I did redoing this whole area? So I said, forget it. Especially since these turntables are $25. I already had one already, and I'd gotten an even better deal on from a hobby shop about, I want to say, close to 5 years back now, maybe 6 years back. So I'm like, that's fine. That's it. I'm just going to throw that in there. And since I was doing that, I decided to get rid of the stupid turntable motor. I had the old gear drive, which dates back to the old school turntables from years ago. It never ran right. It was always noisy. And, well, I decided I'd had enough, and I just went ahead and put a new motor in it. This new one is the belt drive one. It is noticeably quieter. It's still making racket on it. It still makes racket, but it's not like it was. Yeah. Anyway, got through that. I also did get this. I should also mention, I guess what everyone's probably going to be asking. Yes, I did get this whole train area, this whole new line to work. And it makes my standards. I can run an engine that does not have Keep Alive on it, and it will make it around without stalling. I went through all the connections, made sure everything was tightened down. I went in the back also and installed more screws back there to make sure the tracks wouldn't get any ideas about moving around. I did a lot of tweaking, basically. In the end, I was also able to get my entry point track installed here using 18-inch curves, which is what I wanted. But the main problem I had, again, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, but I'll mention it again, the front tracks here, I figured out where all my 15-inch tracks was. It turns out, without realizing it, I used them to make that turn. I must have done it without thinking about it over here. So a lot of these pardon that. So a lot of these tracks right here underneath the trestle right there, those are actually already the 15-inch tracks. So that's quite a tight turn. So I'm going to be restricting this obviously to smaller locomotives. Nonetheless, I don't plan to run big ones. I plan to run like an RS3 and 2 of the smaller old-time style coaches, which I own models of those, the Bachmann styles, around this, to just sort of do a railroad shop, a locomotive shop tour for the miniature model railroad guests, if you will, just to give this sort of a reason for existing. Again, allow me to run an extra train, which is going to be pretty cool. I like the idea of doing that, and I'm glad how it came out. Basically, the project for today now is going to be to wire up all these switches. As you notice, the wires are in place. So we look back there on the side. I have that wire for that switch in place, and I have the wire for this other switch here in place. Zoom in a little bit. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to run those back to the front panel over here. I just want to show you how easy this is. How easy this really is to install this wire. And I'm just only sorry I didn't think of this sooner. I had used, back in the day when this layout was being built, my father and I did use some of this telephone wire to do it. He had access to some stuff, but for some reason that went by the wayside. Anyway, this is conduit. The conduited telephone wire really is perfect for this job. But what I'm going to do now is just show you how easy it is to set up. I'm going to go ahead now and take this, using a pair of wire strippers I got on the internet. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and just strip the tip of the wire, strip the coating off. This is probably the worst part of the whole process, is getting this darn coating off. It is extremely thick, and you sort of have to really go at it to make it free. Actually managed to break through these wires, but it's okay. Again, I gave myself plenty of extra slack, so it isn't that big a deal, but still, it's a little annoying. So I'll just go here and do it. There we go. That's much better. I actually have a wire stripper set up that's good for it. That's why it wouldn't work. Anyway, as you can see, I've got 3 wires. They're basically the same color coding, too. The one I'm not going to use is this red one right over here. I got 4 wires and I only need 3, so I'm going to not use this red one here. I'm going to bend that back and I'm going to strip the tips off of these. And now I'm going to wire this in a pretty unique way. I'm just going to wire them into this switch that already has wires hooked up to it. One might think this is crazy, but actually, if you look back here at my layout, I'll show this in a second. This is actually the same. This switch over here controls the one that is actually part of the crossover to the new line. So the idea here is whenever I hit this switch, it will throw both of them at the same time, and thus actually avoiding derailments by doing this. So all I need now is my screwdriver here. Pardon that little hiccup there. Again, I actually had the wrong switch. Good thing I caught myself, and I did because I realized the screws I looked at before didn't match what I actually had for the project, and sure enough, that's why I had the wrong switch controller. That's what happens when you have that many switches on your layout. Anyway, let's go ahead now and take this apart. I'm going to now again wire this so that all these wires share the same common connectors. My yellow wire is going to be my common connector for the 3 of them, or ground. That's a standard code I always use. And wiring a switch. And again, these have that code, which is really nice. It has the green, it has the red, it has the black, I should say, and it has the green as well as the yellow. So isn't a big deal to operate that. I'm going to now hook this in. I'm going to go one way with this and see if it works. Again, if you're wondering why the power is on, and I don't need to worry too much about it because the power is not supplied here until I press the button. The common is, but the positive is not supplied until I hit the buttons. Let's see if this actually works now. What should happen is I should have this switch now thrown in the proper direction. Just check this now. Again, I'm trying to make sure these are synced so that when I throw it, the switch will throw to the proper direction on both switches. Yep, that's right. So I got it on the first try. Let me now hook the other wires in. This way, so now the switch is currently in that position, is in the open position. So now I have to install another wire to make it go into the closed position, which is what I'm going to do next. So now I got my green wire, and I've got my black wire. It's that got kind of inverted, but I'm not going to take it apart just to fix that because believe me, it's going to be a bit of a pain and really not worth, to be honest, really not worth the effort. I think I'm just going to see if I can get away with just leaving it like that. Yeah, I think that'll work pretty well. Let me undo this wire, just screw just a little bit to get it to sit in there. this down. So now when I go like this, that should now throw them back. Let me check it. They should now both be closed. No, it didn't work right. Let's throw this back again and see what happens. They're both open. Okay. So obviously one of the wires is not in here right. Well, I have the wrong wire connected, or what's the deal here, I wonder? Okay, there's that throw. Ah! It looks like I got it. Let's go back again. It's that way, and now let's throw it back the opposite direction. Yep, that does it. So now I have that all hooked up. Again, it's a matter of synchronizing those switches to make sure they connect correctly. Next, I'll work on the next one. Okay. I just went under the belly of the beast and got my second wire right over here pushed through. So now that switch way back here, I can demonstrate all the way back there. Pick you guys up to see it. That switch way back there now is now remotely controlled, and it needs to be, basically, because there's no way in hell I'd be able to reach that easily. It's pretty much under my tunnel. I've been able to do it testing this, but it needed to happen. So anyway, all the switches are now wired. Next I'm going to go on to screwing down my tracks. I used to staple them, but I find the staples would be a pain to deal with. They tended to fall out. They could be a nuisance if they get in, and the angles I have to reach anyway, it's going to be a challenge. So here's how. So what I've gone to now is the tactic of screwing them down. I'm going to use, let me get the screws out. In fact, I have them right over here. Moved them over here yesterday as I was working on some other things. Ah, yes, here we are. I've got these wood screws. They're a number 8 half-inch screw. That's what I've been using. They're self-drilling, self-tapping style screws. Going to use them with a power drill to speed things up with a screwdriver bit on it. This guy right here, I've had this for a little while. I'm going to go ahead now and start screwing down the main line right over here. This whole area I've just finished building, that whole center track right next to it. And that'll probably be it for a while here. Okay, so I think that's going to be my stopping point for today. I've got my tracks screwed down for the most part. Oh, I forgot to do this one because the engine was parked on it. Stupid me. I'll have to get to that in a second. But yeah, that's basically how it's going to look. All the tracks are screwed down here, as you can see. They'll hold pretty well on that. Yeah, that's how it's going to be. It took a little while to get all this done, but I'm happy with how it came out. I may have to tweak some of these tracks. I've got some more 15-inch turns coming in, which might be necessary depending on how this works out. Anyway, that'll do it for now. I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Oh, one more thing. I did install these switches. That one now works. This is now a crossover. Both switches are wired together. Throw the one switch in, both of them throw. So now I can actually run this thing from remote control reliably. And as usual, I just could not leave long enough alone. I did yet another project. As you notice, I now have a curved switch where that other siding was. And I now have 2 sidings off here for storage. I just figured it made sense to have. This actually new siding looks actually longer than the original one I had in here over here. I didn't screw everything down just yet because I don't know how well this switch is going to work. This has been sitting in storage for a while. It's I think that's a Castedo switch from Italy, or Lima, or one of the two companies made these. In America, in the United States, I should say, we don't really have many curved switches in real life, so you really can't get a model of a curved switch very easily. You usually go for Pico, which is the new designs of these older model power based ones, which were built by companies like Castedo in Italy and then imported to the US by Model Power. So anyway, I'm going to probably have to look for one of these switches because I get the idea that this switch is probably not going to work. This front section here, it's kind of hard to see. I did a little repair on it. It's actually a little dust there. It came out. It's loose actually. Right here, it's actually this section right here. I don't know how well or good this is actually going to work. This section right over here. Sorry about that, folks. This section right here, I had to glue back into place. I don't know how well this is going to work. I was careful not to get glue on the contact point. If it doesn't, I'm just going to have to buy another one. But anyway, it is in. I may have to also hook some wires up to this, but I now have an extra set of those, so that's not a problem. Anyway, so that's going to do it now. I'm going to have to test this, and I'll see whether I actually have to order a switch in for not. But hopefully, if all goes well, I'll have an extra switch here. If not, I'll just have to order one. Take care, everybody.